Hello and welcome to Unit 8, Day 2 Notes. Today we're going to talk about greatest common factors and grouping. We're going to start off first reviewing greatest common factor. The first thing that we want to do is list out all of our factor pairs for 8n to the 5th. If you remember from last time, I would go to the table, take my number, and divide it by x, start at 1, and find all of my factor pairs. My first factor pair is 1 and 8, and second is 2 and 4. And I have 5 n's. For 64, I'll do the same thing. I'll go to table, take 64, divide it by x, and list out all of my factor pairs. I have 1 and 64, 2 and 32. 3 does not have a pair because it's a decimal and we will only use whole numbers. 4 and 16. 5 does not divide in evenly, neither does 6, 7, and then 8 divides with 8. And we have 3 n's. So the largest number that they both have in common is 8, and they both have 3 n's in common as well. So my GCF is going to be 8n cubed, and when I factor that out, I will get n squared plus 8. Moving on to number 2. I'm going to make my factor pair chart again. I have 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and 2 v's. And for 40, I'm going to put that one in my table so that I can get all my factor pairs. 1 and 40, 2 and 20. 4 and 10, 5 and 8. Keep checking, and then we have a repeat of 8 and 5. And for 40v, I only have 1v here. The largest number that they both share, the largest factor, is going to be 8 and 1v. So my GCF is 8v. And when I factor that out, I'm left with v minus 5. Take a couple of moments to try number 3 through 6. Pause the video now to attempt your problems. On your screen now are the answers for number 3 through 6. Pause it here to check your answers. Make sure if you have any questions to send me a message. Now we're going to be moving on to factoring by grouping. So the first thing that we need to remember when we're factoring by grouping is to make sure that the equation is in standard form. Once it's in standard form, we're going to group the two largest and the two smallest terms together in parentheses. Largest and smallest, in this case, is going to be based off of the exponent. There should always be a plus sign in the middle of your two groups. Next, we will take a GCF from each group, and then we'll find the funny GCF, which is going to be a binomial. Factor it out and rewrite. So, in basic steps, we're going to check for order. Then we will group. We'll take a GCF from each group. Then we'll take a funny GCF, and then we will rewrite. If that helps you, write it down. If it doesn't, no worries. Now we're going to move on to number 1. So for number 1, we are going to verify that this is in standard form. We have 2b cubed minus 5b squared plus 10b minus 25. As of right now, it is going in order from highest exponent to lowest exponent. Now we are going to group our terms. When I say group, all I mean is group them together using parentheses. So I'm going to have 2b cubed minus 5b squared plus 10b minus 25. This is where finding a GCF is very important. In our first group, our first set of parentheses, we want to make sure that we pull out our GCF. We know that 2 can only be broken down to 2 and 1, and 5 breaks down to 1 and 5. So we don't have a GCF there. However, we can take out some b's. In this case, we can actually take out b squared. And I'll be left with 2b minus 5. Because b squared is my GCF. In my next group, I have 10b and negative 25. We know that we can't take a b out because there's not a b in both terms. But we can break down 10 and 25 to find out our GCF. 1 and 10, 2 and 5, 1 and 25, 5 and 5. So we see that our GCF here will be 5. Remember, when I take out a GCF, I divide it from everything. That leaves me with 2b minus 5. So I took out 2 GCFs, and now I'm going to take out the funny GCF. The funny GCF is a binomial that they both share. For instance, 2b minus 5 and 2b minus 5 will be my funny GCF. So I'll rewrite it, 2b minus 5 out front. When I divide that out, I'm left with b squared plus 5. And that is my final answer. On to number 2. First thing that we need to make sure is that it is in standard form. We have x squared minus 5x plus 3x minus 15. This is in standard form, and I don't want you to simplify here. Since we're factoring by grouping, we do need 4 terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is group my terms. And find a GCF from each group. From my first group, they both have one x that I can divide out, and I'm left with x minus 5. In my second group, the highest number that they share, my GCF is going to be 3. And that's going to leave me with x minus 5. Then I'll move to my funny GCF. Again, that is the binomial that is shared from each group. I'll pull out x minus 5, and I'm left with x plus 3. Number 3. I think number 3 is a typo. Yes, so we will skip number 3 because that's a repeat and move on to number 4. Number 4 is 2x squared plus 6x minus 3. This is in standard form, so I will move on to grouping. In my first group, I'm going to have 2x squared plus 6x. And remember from my rules up top, we always must have a plus sign between the two parentheses. So I'm going to put a plus in the middle and keep everything for my second group. Negative x minus 3. For my first group, I'm going to pull out a GCF. My GCF here is going to be 2x, and I'm left with x plus 3. My second group, my GCF is going to be negative 1, and I'm left with x plus 3. Now I factor out my funny GCF, which is x plus 3. And I'm left with 2x minus 1. Now on to number 5. 4p cubed plus 16p squared minus p minus 4. Take a second to group your terms together. Remember that there needs to be a plus in the center. Pause the video here. Once we've grouped them together, it should be 4p cubed plus 16p squared plus negative p minus 4. Again, make sure that you have kept that plus sign in the center. Now we're going to find the GCF. The GCF for my first group is going to be 4p squared. That leaves me with p plus 4. And the GCF for my second group is negative 1, leaving me with p plus 4. My funny GCF from this entire line is going to be p plus 4, and that leaves me with 4p squared minus 1 as my final answer. We're moving on to number 6. First thing I want to do is verify that it's in standard form. This problem goes from highest to lowest based on exponents, a cube, a square, n, and then 24. Now I will group. If you want to try this problem on your own, pause the video now. If you still need some more assistance, continue watching. My GCF for my first group is going to be 5n squared. I'm left with 7n minus 6. And my GCF for my second group is going to be positive 4, leaving me with 7n minus 6. If you are not to the point where you can see the GCF like I am able to do, please continue making your GCF charts like we showed you previously. I'll rewrite my funny GCF, and I'm left with 5n squared plus 4. That's all for part 1. Come back to part 2 for the remainder of the notes.